As always, the Minding Your Business podcast, we're new into 2019. So we wrapped up 2018. Now we're in 2019. This is episode 76 of the Minding Your Business podcast. It's brought to you by the Binge podcast network. That's www.onabinge.com is the move you need to make. We've got great content that's continuing to be added. Man, my guy, Dominic Lawson with Owls LLC and with the Startup Life podcast is a phenomenal human being, man. Matter of fact, he just joined on Facebook Live. And, man, that dude's a vampire, man. He's always working, always communicating, man. I appreciate that brother as a business partner and just as a friend with what he's doing. And I'm excited about what's going on in 2019. But, man, I don't know if I ever see my guy Dominic Lawson not working, man. That dude is always working, man. Him and his wife, Kenda, man, do a great job with Owls LLC. I know they got big plans for this year, man. And he's got great episodes lined up for the Startup Life podcast, excuse me. That's one of our flagships on the Binge podcast network. So if you're a podcaster or you're looking to start up your own podcast, you need to get with us. Go to onabinge.com for more information. And of course, the podcast is always brought to you by Brooks Brothers Consulting, started in June 2013 by my brother and I, Philip. We are a sales, leadership, business development organization or firm. And we're working a lot still with financial institutions, helping connect them with their CRA compliance in low and moderate income communities and how they invest. We are helping small businesses now with writing their living document, which we refer to as a business plan. You need to have a plan for your business that you follow and that evolves as you and your business and the environment evolves. And so you need to get with us on writing your business plans, not just submitting to your bank or giving to a potential investor or anything like that. It's a guide. It's a kind of a roadmap that helps you with your business, whether it's new or existing. So you need to get with us on that. And then if you're building out your sales platform, so you got your goals for 2019 and you're looking to follow those, you haven't abandoned them now that it's January 4th, you hadn't already abandoned your goals. You need to get with us. You need a team to work with you to help develop and transition what you've got in your head into a working, executable plan on how you're going to develop revenue and develop sales and even engage your sales force when you start talking about 2019. There's going to be a lot going on, a lot of noise. Let us help you declutter with that. So that's Brooks Brothers Consulting at www.brooksbrothersconsulting.com. Listen, we are at episode number 76. I've got Spreaker here live. I've got Facebook live. I got people joining in, engaged. Episode number 76, we're going to talk about the history of government shutdowns, how it affects small business, and then we're going to go into Ron's rundown. But first,
what we do here is go back.
Thank y'all so much for joining on today. It has been a phenomenal week. We're into 2019. I hope that you're excited. I hope your friends and family all enjoyed the holidays with you. I hope they didn't get tired of you by the time it got to New Year's Day. For those of you that had family that traveled, hopefully they were safe. Hopefully you were safe if you traveled to visit family, friends. Maybe you got on a plane to go visit a couple enemies. I don't know, but whatever you did over the holidays, hopefully if you've got children or grandchildren, they didn't eat up your whole check while they were out of school. I know here locally in Memphis, there's some kids that are still out of school till next week. Mine actually went back yesterday, and ooh, man, thank goodness. Thank goodness. So anyway, I hope 2019 is off to a great start. I hope that you found joy. And if you took some time off, if you still had to work, I hope you were still able to plan and be ready now for 2019. So we're here, folks. I'm your host, Champ Ron. This is the Minding Your Business podcast. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. All right. So today, let me give the quick rundown again. We're going to talk about the United States government shutdown, everybody's favorite topic, but not really, but some of y'all's favorite topic, if you're concerned about that. We're going to talk about some of the history with the shutdown, how that began, how we've gotten to this point, specifically how it affects small business, things like real estate and other commerce. And so that's what we're going to get into as far as our main topic. Then in Ron's rundown, I've got several things we're going to get into. First, the Business of R.Kelly. So the Surviving R.Kelly special came on Lifetime yesterday with 2 episodes. I think they've got probably like 100 more. Nah, they got about 4 or 5 more, man. But that got people all riled up. Those stories from the 90s and early 2000s concerning music artist, Grammy Award-winning artist, Robert Sylvester Kelly out of Chicago, Illinois. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the rent being due for Millennials. We're going to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies. And we're going to talk about a funny story about putting together the family budget here in my household. So those are things we're going to get into. But first, again, shout out to everybody on Facebook Live. Dominic says, "You're going to allow me to be great, Ron." Yeah, man, you're great, brother. That's why I'm on here and I mentioned it to you. Olivia says she's here, so she's got her hand raised. So we thank her for joining. Everybody that's joining on Facebook Live as well as on Spreaker, y'all are on it. Forgive me, I'm a little late recording on today. We had a 3-hour marathon meeting on a Friday that was put together within the office. So that turned out to be a great meeting that we need to have as we're discussing and solidifying 2019 plans. And so it's very important in your business that you do that. And at first I didn't think we need to do that for 3 hours, but that turned out to be very profitable and good use of our time, particularly with setting time tables and deliverables. It's one thing to have plans. It's another thing to have those plans where what are you actually looking to get and by when, and what kind of deliverables do you have established and expectations for people and for processes. So some things that we're looking to automate, some things that we're looking to rectify, looking at marketing materials, things like that, how we edify and adjust those and think critically around how much of that kind of stuff do we need or don't need. All right. So anyway, that's what had me running a little bit late. So I apologize for that for those that are listening live. But all right, here's the deal. So let's get into the government shutdown. So right before Christmas, somewhere around December the 20th, December the 21st, it was announced that the United States federal government was going to shut down yet again. It's done so, I think about 21 times so far as it relates to why they shut down now, which is usually around budgeting. All right. So the Congress either does not propose a budget, or the United States president, who is currently one Mr. Donald J. Trump, who is the current United States president, number 45 in the history of the United States of America. If the president decides that he or she is not going to sign the budget, then that usually results in what's called a government shutdown. All right, so the very first government shutdown actually took place in 1976 under then United States President Gerald R. Ford. So President Gerald Ford did not sign the budget for that year. He vetoed a $56 billion spending bill for the Department of Labor and Health, as well as education and welfare. Welfare is always something that, particularly when shutdowns first started, welfare usually tended to be something that was involved, along with abortion, things and all that. So a lot of social issues sometimes come into play as far as how they're funded. So in 1976 was the first shutdown. It was from September 30th until October the 10th of 1976. And so that was 10 days that shutdown lasted. And, it had some kind of minor effects on business. I wasn't around during that time. Many of you listening to this podcast weren't, but if you happen to have been around and, politically aware in 1976, then you may remember this happening. And so, as I talk about this more, you'll kind of see kind of a pattern of how the government decides to shut down. And when the government shuts down, it's generally shutting down, parks, and, a lot of workers are furloughed, which I'll get into that in a little bit, particularly with this current shutdown. You'll have certain departments within government that either are on skeleton crews or shut down altogether. Of course, the military and things like that are still in play, even with a partial or complete shutdown. There's still certain services that will be in play. And you can research those for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and list all the different things that are in play, but there are some things certainly that are not in play, y'all, when you start talking about government shutdown. So next after that, and again, I'm not going to read all the details on all these, but under President Jimmy Carter, there was a shutdown from September 30th to October 13th in 1977. That was over 12 days. So a lot of those, again, were late 70s things, where Democrats and Republicans were having issues with funding for abortion and things like that. Particularly, Medicaid being used to pay for abortions. So under President Jimmy Carter, he actually had several government shutdowns, which kind of marred his presidency. Fortunately, maybe unfortunately. And then you had President Ronald Reagan, who had several. The first one being November 20th to November 23rd of 1981, the year I was born. And then you had one in 1982, actually two in 1982. And then in 1983, 84, 86, 87. So at that time, if you can recall from the 1980s, is when the political climate became even that much more heated. As you had more media, more people involved, more speaking heads to begin talking about it. And then you started to have more of this culture of divisiveness between Democrats and Republicans, where it became constituents made it that much difficult for either side to really work together across the aisle. Although there were eventually instances that they did, that's where you started to have more of the polarization with it. All right. So you get to George H.W. Bush, who recently passed away. President George H.W. Bush went through a shutdown from October 5th through October the 9th of 1990. And his was very interesting because President George H.W. Bush ran on a campaign slogan of, kind of read my lips, no raising of taxes or no more taxes or whatever it was. But of course, then, he gets in and starts proposing things that require raising taxes. So, you can kind of read between the lines on that. So anyway, that was over kind of a 3-day period, very short. Then you get to President Bill Clinton. Who experienced 5 days, November the 13th through November the 19th of 1995. That was 5 days. That was over Medicare premium increases that President Clinton vetoed. It was presented by Congress. He vetoed it, and it resulted in a shutdown. He experienced another one, which was kind of the big one, and the longest one to date in United States history was under President Bill Clinton. It was 21 days from December the 15th through January the 6th. So December the 15th of 1995 through January the 6th of 1996. That was one, again, over kind of, more of the Medicaid type stuff, premiums and things like that were, disputed. And so President Clinton and Congress went to bat against each other then, and that was a pretty long shutdown. Then you get into President Barack Obama, who experienced a shutdown from September 30th through October 17th of 2013. So there was a big gap between the last one with Bill Clinton. You didn't have any kind of government shutdowns under President George W. Bush, the second Bush that was president. The son, you did not have a government shutdown under him. So there were 17 years between government shutdowns from the last one with Bill Clinton to under Barack Obama. This one was, of course, around what we're seeing today, which was the Affordable Care Act, which some have referred to it as Obamacare. That was in 2013. So, the House of Representatives passed several versions of that particular bill, but each time the Senate sent it back. So, and this was something that John Boehner was involved in it, and Harry Reid and all those folks, if you recall back then, for many of you that were politically aware just a few years ago. So, you get to today. There was a shutdown almost a year ago under now current President Donald Trump. There was a shutdown January 20th to January 22nd of 2018, 3 days. That was very, kind of very short. And of course, his big thing has been around immigration, which brings us to, there was a 9-hour one February the 9th of 2018. Nothing really big there. So now you have the current shutdown that started Friday, December the 21st. It is still going despite Democrats now taking over the House of Representatives. Last night, they passed a spending bill that was accepted. The challenge is that it didn't stop the shutdown because this particular spending bill did not include money for a wall that President Trump has touted since his campaign a couple years ago, building a wall between Mexico and the United States on the southern border of the United States of America. That was not included in the spending bill, and so the shutdown still continues. All right. So who knows how many days this is going to be, or kind of go through. But anyway, what I want to speak to is what the shutdowns tend to do as far as how they affect small business, because we're very familiar with, I think, how shutdowns affect people. You got a lot of workers that are furloughed. Banks and credit unions sometimes tend to step up and help provide loan funding, interest-free and, no fees and things like that for people when they're out of work or furloughed by the federal government. And, of course, keep in mind, this started on the 21st, so you're talking about through the holidays and everything, man. So it's not an easy thing for everybody. But a lot of federal workers, even if you're not furloughed, you may be sent home, because, like I mentioned earlier, some departments of the federal government operate off skeleton crews and things like that. So, and of course, a lot of the federal workers are kind of concentrated, mostly, of course, in Washington, D.C. and the DMV, California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia account for a lot of areas where you've got high concentrations of government workers. But for your small business, kind of what this means, and somewhat individually, one, depending on how long the shutdown lasts, it could have an effect on things like tax returns, your ability to submit your tax returns. This affects some of your low and moderate income people, which may be, depending on your industry, a lot of your customers if you're a small business owner. So if you have a small business that your target market is a low to your more moderate income individual or individuals, your business could be affected because those people that may be counting on a tax refund, they tend to file very early in the year. So as soon as they get their W-2 and all their paperwork, they fly in because they want that money as quick. some of your more upper middle class type folks, and people who have much higher incomes and wealth and things like that, they also tend to be more apt to have to owe taxes. Well, obviously they're not as quick to file, and so they tend to file later in the year. It doesn't have as much impact on their ability to live from day to day. But there are a lot of people in this country where it does have an impact, and so your business could be affected by that. And so those small business owners are looking at this, and they're not as confident, because without knowing when the end is in sight for this shutdown could mean, as you go through the rest of January, if this gets through January and lingers even into February, you could have a situation where a lot of your target customer base could be impacted and not quite have the disposable income that they normally would have at this time of the year to be able to patronize your business. So that's one area where you should keep an eye out on what's going on. And I can say this because I know that for some people, they're a little bit, they feel immune to things like government shutdowns, and it doesn't really affect my day-to-day life and things like that. And that can be true for a lot of us. That could be true, that it doesn't stop you getting up and going to work, or going to your business, or picking the kids up from daycare, or going to school, or going to the grocery store to get groceries, or going to a restaurant, or hanging out with your friends and family, that kind of thing. But for those that are tied, somewhat close to the government, it can have an impact. Another area where the shutdown can have an impact on small business is if you're tied to any of the parks or anything like that that's closed, any of the agencies. The SBA is something that tends to run on more of a skeleton kind of crew. So if you're looking at working with the SBA to get funding, or engage in application, your application could be delayed just based on the shutdown, which can again have a impact on your business if you're looking towards a approval decision and ultimately being able to have funds from the federal government. In the form of an SBA loan. So, that's another area where you could be impacted significantly when you start talking about a government shutdown, is with the SBA. Another area too is with when you talk about parks and things like that. There are a lot of businesses that sell merchandise, and they sell guides and different trips. Some of the travel industry to those park areas is impacted. So there's some areas that are significantly impacted when you start talking about small business. Even down in Florida, where there's a good number of government workers, y'all. A lot of those, wildlife parks and things like that, those guides, some of those things are impacted. They're not open. So I would say be mindful of this particular shutdown now. It has a little bit much more widespread effect. I'm not going to get into all the things with the wall, although it's kind of funny that the GoFundMe I think account that was set up is up somewhere like 18.5 or 19 million that people have given to this GoFundMe, which speaks to some things. Most people don't understand government, because you cannot make a donation to the federal government. They cannot accept a donation from private citizens. So it's kind of interesting that people would even give money to begin with to some guy who creates a GoFundMe to try to build a wall. Just speaks to some things in this country. So particularly how people, the mindset of people today, or some people. So anyway, there's some things with the wall that I'm not really going to get into, because there's not always a lot of intelligent communication or dialogue that can take place when you start talking about building a wall between countries. If anything, there needs to be a consideration around we fought as a country against Russia for decades to finally get walls torn down over in their country. The Great Wall of China that took 200 years to build is still up. So America, the home of the free, you're looking at ways to divide. And the funny thing is that most people don't just walk across the border; they fly in. So the wall, unless you're going to build the wall up to the stratosphere, you're still not going to really keep people from doing what they're already doing, which is fly in, or they go around the wall. So it's just interesting. But so anyway, government shutdown, y'all, is a big deal. Keep your eyes on it. If you're having issues, I'd like to connect you to some resources. Email me at ron@themybpodcast.com. ron@themybpodcast.com. Email me because there are some different resources that I have access to that can help you if you've been impacted by the government shutdown. Hopefully, it'll end here in a day or a few days, and things get back to kind of how they've been. Big year politically this year, whether it's in your local politics or it's state politics or even up to the federal level, as we start talking about candidates for United States president, as the presidential election starts to pick up, as far as the campaign trail, which will probably start picking up this summer. So those are things, again, just to keep in mind, and how you're holding your elected officials accountable to the things that you care about, and then particularly around small business and real estate. Okay? All right, so we kind of went through that. So now let me get into my rundown real quick. Shout out to everybody on Spreaker. Y'all been active. Y'all just been talking. I can't even keep up sometimes with what y'all talking about. So Nia, what's up, girl? How you doing? And Mario, what's going on, brother? Good talking to you the other day. Lakeisha Williams said, it took me 5.5 hours to cross back across the border last week because of the shutdowns. Another couple told that it took them 7 hours to cross back and forth. They are literally reducing staff at the border because Trump is mad because he can't get money for a border wall. It's ironic stupidness. Yeah, so I can't say I disagree with that, Lakeisha. But it just goes to, there's impacts on that, and then there's impacts on what that has for business when, people aren't able to even get across the border. And, anything that we use in this country to try to divide, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit with y'all friend Robert Sylvester Kelly. But we use a lot of things in this country to divide versus looking at ways that we're similar. We're so much similar, even more so than we are different. Rod Selman, what's going on, man? Happy anniversary to your business, STF Financial. Scott Kenny, what's going on, my brother? How you doing, man? Deverick said shutdown is definitely having an effect on my logistics company. Yeah, and I didn't even get into it. Deverick brings up actually a good point. From a trucking standpoint, a lot of the people who have government contracts and things like that are impacted when there's a shutdown, because who's there processing invoices and sending out direct deposits and all that if they're not there, right? So Deverick brings up a good point. Montoya, what's going on? Antoine, how you doing? Philip Ashley Ricks, what's going on, my brother? Great chocolatier, man, business owner. Lakeisha said, yeah, the Berlin Wall. Yeah, that was over during the Cold War days. That was torn down, I believe, in 1989. So now we wait 30 years, and now we want to build our own wall after we try to get one torn down. Zane, how you doing, my brother? What's going on, man? Andrea, how you doing? Yeah, what's up, Mario? Ray, what's up, brother? How you doing? So, yeah, man. So those are the things, man, with the government shutdown. So don't take this thing lightly at all. Don't take it lightly at all. There's impacts on business and things like that. So if you're getting into business this year, it's a great year to do it. It's a great year for startups. But you got to consider the infrastructure. You got to consider the landscape, the environment. Muffin, what's going on, girl? Andrea, how you doing? Thank you for joining here on Facebook Live. So listen, let me get into some of the rundown here as we keep progressing through the Minding Your Business podcast. So let's do this. Let's get into Ron's rundown. All right. So first, let me address something real quick that has had social media buzzing. Even outside of my timeline, I've been able to visit on Twitter and kind of see some of the back and forth dialogue. And social media is so funny. I've never gotten upset about a profile pic. Not once. I don't care if we're friends on Facebook or connected. Nobody's ever pissed me off on social media. I just don't operate in that emotion, man. One of the things that technology allows us to do is filter. You can control your timeline, unless you choose not to and you just like to have negative energy and you just like to be, weak and petty. But you can control your timeline, people. You don't have to. If you don't want to see it, delete it. Filter it out. I might piss some people off. I think some people might be jumping off Facebook Live now. You control your timeline. If you don't want to see it, now you're too nosy to do that, many people, so you're not going to do that. That's why it's blasphemous for me to say it. But my timeline, if I get something on my timeline I don't want to see, I filter it out. I filter either that person out or that type of content. It's not that hard. It's just in your settings. And you can do that across just about any of your social media platforms. But anyway, Surviving R.Kelly comes on yesterday on Lifetime. I think they did 2 episodes. They've got about 100 more to do. No, I think they got maybe it's just a few more to do. All right. So, and Surviving R.Kelly is about a musician that many of y'all are familiar with because some of y'all listen to his music. Some of y'all still listen to his music. Y'all don't have the strength of character to admit it, but y'all do. And y'all will get on social media and admonish other people for listening to it, but y'all won't film no video of you doing it. So a lot of y'all still listen to his music. And that's fine. That's your choice. And y'all lie and say y'all don't, but y'all do. Some of y'all still make babies. Some of y'all still get pregnant to R. Kelly stuff. Uh-oh. Deborah Watson. Yeah, so some of y'all still listen. Some of y'all were born from R. Kelly music. Some of y'all that were born in the 90s, you can't tell me if you was born in 1994 you wasn't part of no R. Kelly fiasco. Ask your mama. Well, I gotta do like Councilman Berlin Boyd, just like your mammy. So, yeah, how you said you were born in 1996? You know you was born off of R. Kelly track. Because look, who owned the 1990s? R. Kelly, Babyface, Jimmy Jam, and Terry Lewis. I mean, they produced just about all the as far as R&B music. They got Dr. Dre and Daz and Primo and everybody that was producing music from a rap standpoint. But when you talk about R&B from the 1990s, you're talking about Robert Sylvester Kelly. You're talking about Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, Pebbles in the early, L.A. Reid. Like I said, Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam and all them. These folks produced the whole decade. So you a lie. Somebody born in 1994 talking about I don't know nothing. Your mama was listening to 12 Play. She was. She still is. She just ain't gonna say it on Facebook. So anyways, Surviving R. Kelly comes on yesterday. It causes a frenzy on a number of different fronts. And you get people that get all upset and, they, lashing out at profile pics. They blocking people. They're being passive aggressive. They got sub posts and all kinds of stuff going on. And for those who hadn't had a chance to look at it, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you probably know this story because these stories are 20 to 25 years old in some cases, in terms of R. Kelly and his what's been documented profusely, that he had an issue with young girls, young women. And that issue resulted in, various lawsuits and all kinds of different things. A lot of pain and hurt for a lot of young girls who are now grown women who came out for this special and are sharing their story. And one thing I didn't like about it was when you start sharing stories about people who are no longer here to be able to confirm or deny or speak to it. And that's one of Aaliyah. I thought that that's something that you got to get to a point where you start to leave out if you want to speak of it from a historical standpoint. But when you start introducing new things about her and she's not here to speak on it, I think that's something that should be looked at. That's just my opinion. So that's not something I really care for. I was a kid into my teenage years when all this was going on, so you didn't have social media and all that with when you start talking about this R. Kelly situation. Now, I do recall, in 2002, when he went to, I guess the allegations came, he went to trial. I think in 2008 he was found not guilty on all charges and all that kind of thing. You had the tape that came out of him allegedly peeing on a young lady and all this kind of thing. So this has caused a lot of stir with people. And some of these folks are my age or older. They're into their late 30s and 40s, maybe even 50. And they just get all riled up and pissed off about it all over again when something like this comes out. And no, you're not going to get a Harvey Weinstein tell-all. Not anytime soon. You're not going to get a Matt Lauer tell-all. You're not going to get a Charlie, whatever his name is, tell-all. So no, you're not going to get that. Not anytime soon. Here's the thing with R. Kelly. All right. And this is with all jokes aside, y'all. Yes, it is documented that R. Kelly had a major issue with this, and there are consequences for the things that are the truth that he should have to deal with. There's no question about that, from my opinion. What I'm interested in, and this doesn't mean that because I'm interested in this that I'm not interested in the other stuff. What I'm interested in is when we look at our own families, when we look at our own communities, what Robert Sylvester Kelly is, if you use him as a case study for what occurs in our own communities. Many of you have dated older men. Many of you have dated older women. I can remember in high school, the older cats coming by the high school, picking up girls that were my age, younger. Who knows what they were going to do? I'm sure they weren't going to I'm sure they didn't come back to help them study for Algebra 2, right? I'm sure they were coming to discuss chemistry and biology. Okay? But here's the thing. We have too long in our community have looked past things. Looked past people and their indiscretions, particularly around abuse and within our families. We have. We have, and many of us could say we're guilty about it. You don't have to admit it. You don't have to raise your hand. I'm not going to ask y'all to raise your hand on the podcast. But we're guilty of that in our families. And a lot of that went back to a lot of changes, and we were talking about government and politics earlier, as things changed in our community politically, and you started having the influx of drugs and things like that in our community. A lot of things changed. We accepted things like drug money into our families. You'd be surprised at how many of our grandmothers allowed sons and grandsons and things like that to knowingly sell drugs because they wanted the money. Factories and things like that were closing. There weren't places for men to work. Men started selling things, started selling drugs, and there was a lot of blindness to things that were going on. Some of those things included sexual abuse, mental and physical abuse in our families. As much as we love family in our community, we love to say somebody's our cousin. We love to say somebody's my auntie, my TT. We love to say my grandmama, my nana, my granddaddy, my daddy, my cousin, my first cousin, my second cousin, my 10th cousin. We love to do that. We love family when it comes to outward show, and folks go to church and they have the family church. We love family until it comes to our indiscretions. And what R.Kelly represents is he's a figurehead for a lot of ills we have in our community. So I say this. The question becomes, and I've seen people get upset and go back and forth on, well, where were the parents? Like y'all ain't lied to y'all mom and daddy where y'all was going. Yeah, so y'all go tell me that every time y'all went somewhere, Mama, I'm going over to Junebug's house. Okay, baby, have a good time. No, y'all ain't do that. But y'all were going to see Junebug. Y'all got Crystal or whoever y'all friend was. I'm going to Crystal's house. I'm going to Shamika's house. And then you go over there and you call Junebug over, or you go over to Junebug's house. And then vice versa. Mom, I'm going to play ball. Mom, I'm going to the library. Knowing you're going to see Shamika. And I'm just using these names. If someone out there named Shamika, they go get mad at me. But that's the deal, okay? That's the deal. So all that facetiousness aside, though, yes, you can question parents in those situations. In the R.Kelly situation, a lot of grown men around R.Kelly wasn't saying nothing. They were grown men. It wasn't like R.Kelly in the house. It wasn't like the house just full of R.Kelly and 16-year-olds. There was other grown folk there too. Here's the thing the special didn't talk about. There were some grown women there too, y'all. Uh-oh. Let me cut the podcast off that. Some of these things are facilitated, like a lot of these video shoots. They're not facilitated by men. The women that are recruited for some of those things are by women. Yes. There's some women that recruited some of those things for R. Kelly. They just weren't on camera yesterday in the special. They didn't return the phone calls. If they're still around. So he had help. There's no way R. Kelly, as busy as he was in the 90s, had that much time to recruit that many girls on his own, where everybody recognized wherever he show up. Huh? So, here's the thing, though. Let me get back on track with this. The deal is this, y'all. Yes, you could question parents. You definitely damn sure can question R. Kelly and everybody that's around him and this whole situation. You saw his artist Sparkle break down with introducing her 13-year-old at the time cousin, who R. Kelly completely turned out. I mean, damn. Right? And she felt bad about that. And you can question her judgment, things like that. But here's the thing. When people want to be famous, I'm telling you, a drug that's stronger than heroin, that's stronger than angel dust, that's stronger than anything you take, is fame. And the desire to be famous. Okay? That is a very strong drug. People will sell out their souls. They'll sell their children. They'll sell themselves. They don't care to be rich and famous. So yes, when a 14-year-old girl is around R. Kelly, she's not processing, that whole thing. Guess what? When some of the mamas and daddies was around R. Kelly, and they see, I Believe I Can Fly, and he can cut that for you listening to that conversation? When he can put out write a "You Are Not Alone" for a Michael Jackson? Huh? You answering that? You having that meeting? You having that call? The thing is, people sometimes they get lustful into what a person can bring. Okay? So there's not a taking a fault away from anybody, and it's not about just throwing the finger. My thing is this: is R. Kelly represents what we have widespread in our community. So what I'm suggesting is take this story. Don't get upset with each other about who's right and who's wrong and have these frivolous debates. Because that's all we're doing on social media. You're not going to change nobody's mind on social media. Y'all never once on any of y'all posts or any of your things that when you go on someone else's post or you're on your post, you never heard nobody say, you know what, Chaperon, you're right. I was completely wrong. I had bad facts, and you're completely right. I've changed my perception. Hell no. You ain't never heard nobody that. Because if someone feels like that, guess what they're going to do? They're going to go ghost. They're not going to say anything. They're going to disappear if they're completely wrong. And it's found out to be truthful that they're wrong. Otherwise, debating about who's right. And what's happened with social media is everybody's a reporter now. And because everybody's a reporter, everybody thinks how reporters do, which is I got to be first and I got to be right. And you got to be wrong. That's what we are. We're lust for being first. I got to have the information out first. And I got to be right. And being first is more valuable than being right. That's how you think in that kind of journalistic reporting. So everybody's got that's on social media. So we have these endless debates. We go back and forth. I didn't know you thought like that. Yes, you did. You've been Facebook friends with some of these folks for 10 years. You know how they think. But I'm not going to get into all the single and married and all this stuff. How a lot of y'all think and how y'all rate people based on how they look and things like that. Not going to get into that. R. Kelly. All right. We've got to use this as a template to go back into our families and expose and address some ills that we know about. Because we've got Robert Sylvester Kellys in our families. And we've got Roberta Kellys in our families. This ain't all just a man thing. Some of this stuff, too, is facilitated by women as well as men. So go back with an open mind. And a lot of people are the victims of the similar abuse that those girls went through. And I'm not even talking about no one as successful as R. Kelly. I'm talking about Pookie, who got $5 to his name and can't read a song, much less write a song like an R. Kelly. So we've had that in our families, y'all. And amongst our square, things that people know about that happened, that didn't say nothing. That had nothing to do with a record deal or singing or anything like that. So I say all that in my little rant here now, that take the R. Kelly situation. It's not about going back and forth with each other, but take it back and think about your own situations, your own families, and the pain, and hurt that have been caused by some family members in your family who have operated in the same spirit or the same approach that R. Kelly, maybe even worse. But it's not about who we're going to point the fingers at and blame. You're talking about something from 20-something years ago. That ship has sailed. That ship has sailed with all that. Now it's just about either you go to bring new charges up against R. Kelly or not, or whatever you're going to do. And his attorney's talking about suing over that special and things like that. We'll see what happens with that. But that's the deal with R. Kelly. But going back and forth on social media, commenting all day, there's so many bigger things that we can be out here doing. It's 2019. It's time to get it. And, arguing about an R. Kelly special, then putting money in nobody's pocket that's listening to this podcast, or that's on my Facebook Live, or that is on Spreaker. It didn't change nothing about your situation. Whatever your situation is still there after you get done arguing about R.Kelly and Aaliyah and all the women that were, presented on that. And shout out to those women. It takes a lot of strength and courage to get on that. If they're on there and being truthful, that takes a lot of courage to do at any point, no matter how many years it's been. But many of you have been pained in that same way. And it's time that we hold our family members accountable to that type of behavior. Stop sweeping it under the rug. Stop making men and women or young boys or young girls feel bad about raising their hand and saying this was an issue or this was inappropriate. Because many people are guilty of that too. The same people that are slamming the R. Kelly situation are the same people that hid it in their own families or amongst their own friend faction. So keep those things in mind, y'all, as we talk about this R. Kelly situation. But don't have falling outs with people over stuff like that. Most of y'all ain't never met R. Kelly. And like I said, some of y'all still get listening to TP2. You know you are. Some of y'all listened to it last night. Some of y'all, when y'all get done listening to this podcast, you go switch over to some R. Kelly music. All right? So it's all good. That's my thing on R. Kelly. All right. So moving on from R. Kelly, Millennials, the rent's due. All right. So a report came out in the Wall Street Journal. You can go check that out if you subscribe to it or whatnot. I think they may give you a couple free articles, but this year you're seeing, there's reports coming out that millennials are further delaying things like buying homes from a real estate standpoint. So that has some impact on the real estate community. And they're preferring rents, but rents are going up, y'all. Y'all know that. Rent is going up, and so now you're starting to see there's a low supply of affordable housing. Memphis has a good bit of it, but a lot of cities, particularly coastal cities, are having trouble with affordable housing. So now you're going to start seeing people get into the construction business. So don't be surprised if you start seeing the tiny home business continue to grow, as well as rental companies start building their own homes. So instead of waiting on the supply to pick back up, you'll start seeing some more well-to-do rental companies start building more affordable housing because they've got the ability to scale it. It's hard now for a builder to go build a bunch of $100,000 and $150,000 houses because the lots are so expensive. By the time you build it, you got to sell the damn house for $250,000 to make any money. So they're not nonprofits. They're not going to do it just for the sake of doing it or just from the goodness of their heart. They're capitalists, and so they're doing it for capital. All right, so keep that in mind, millennials. As rents continue to go up, I advise you to begin working on your credit, work on things. Instead of arguing about R. Kelly, work on building up your pedigree in terms of your incomes and things like that, and then be creative. I just had Chris Prefontaine on last week, and he's got his free book out there, by the way. Email me at ron@themybpodcast.com, and I can get you a free copy of his book. And he's got some good nuggets in there about ways that you can acquire real estate without utilizing a lot of your credit and having a bunch of income. So you need to get with me on that. But yeah, millennials are going to pay up for the rent. Rent's just going to keep going up. And as it was said in one of my posts, you're going to pay mortgage whenever. You're always going to pay a mortgage. It's either going to be somebody else's or it's going to be yours. So that's just your choice with that. All right, next thing. So I had a couple of episodes ago, we talked about budgeting. All right. And I worked with my wife. We put together our budget. And it's interesting when you go through your budget process because you start looking at, a few years ago, I paid hellified money for daycare. That we're past that because our girls have aged out of daycare and they're in school. Thank goodness. Thank goodness, man. Y'all know how much daycare costs? In 2015, we paid for 3 girls to go to daycare together. We pay $25,000. And that's with one of them going to kindergarten by August. If we had just went the whole year with all 3 in daycare, we probably been looking at north of $28,000 to $30,000 just for daycare. That's one bill. One. I'm holding up my one to the Facebook Live and Spreaker audience. One. That's one bill. $25,000. So now we don't have to budget for that kind of stuff anymore. So extremely fortunate. But it's funny when you put your personal budget together, because it reveals some things and it makes you have to adjust some things. Like, we were spending hellified money at the grocery store. Our top household bills, we probably have 6 or 7 bills that make up about 70% of our budget. And then the rest is just this, frivolous stuff that we can control. But we got about 6 or 7 bills that are fairly fixed that make up a big chunk of our budget. And so one of the things I'm looking at cable hard, how I'm going to cut that cable. Might look at some Hulu or some things like that. I'm looking at our cars, with car notes. We might have to make decisions on that. But everything I'm doing, Lakeisha Williams is eating out. That was not a huge thing for us, but it was still big in 2018, and we're addressing that. So Lakeisha's right. But, I encourage you as you're rounding out your budget, man. It's just funny. But I sat down and put it together in Excel, looked it over with the Mrs., got her blessing on it, and we're all ready to go. So, but now we start implementing. So this first week, now we start getting into implementing it. And it takes some getting used to. You're going to eat a lot more leftovers this year. And some things y'all are really good, the second and third day. And then some things are, I don't know. Like we had, some taco stuff that was left over. Taco meat. Man, after things don't keep like they used to. After about 3 days, like, hell. Nah, man, we got to throw this away. Yeah, so Mario says the Fire Stick as far as with cable. Yeah, I've got that, but you got to stream through that. And you still want to get your local channels and all that, Mario. So, you cut your price in half at the very least. So anyway, last thing, let me go through on Ron's rundown. Let me give some advice to the Memphis Grizzlies. So the Memphis Grizzlies the other night played the Detroit Pistons here in Memphis. They lost after having a lead. And 2 players, Garrett Temple and Amari Caspi, got into a scuffle in the locker room, and there's some different things going on. All right. So the Grizzlies have lost, I want to say, 14 out of 20 games. They started out 12-5. They were number 1 in the conference. Now they've fallen completely out of the playoff race in the NBA. Here's my advice to the Memphis Grizzlies. You're going to have to make a quick decision on the direction of the franchise. The Memphis Grizzlies franchise has had a lot of issues. They've scored on some draft picks with Jaren Jackson Jr. I think Javon Carter's going to be tight. They've got a few nice pieces, but Marcus Gasol is going to be a free agent after this year. You're going to have to make a decision. And what the Grizzlies are going to have to do is, the NBA is made up now. The best teams in the NBA have people who can score from the wing. So whether it's a James Harden, a Kevin Durant, a Paul George, a LeBron James, a Kyle Kuzma, a Giannis, you got to have guys that can take the ball from the three-point line, shoot it and make it with a high percentage, and put the ball on the floor and get to the basket. If you don't have that, you're going to struggle in today's NBA. You have to have guys who can dribble, pass, shoot. You're going to have guys that go hard. All right? So Memphis has some guys that go hard. They've got, they're a good team, and they've shown they can win. But what I advise is you're going to have to make a move on Marc Gasol, and you're going to have to decide your culture. Because when you start talking about grit and grind and all that kind of thing, Grit and grind work for a certain set of players, but that evolves. All right. And in today's NBA, you got to be able to defend, yes, but you've got to be able to score. And the Grizzlies struggle with scoring. So they need to really look at how they're going to feature Jaren Jackson Jr. I think you need to feature him more in your offense. And you're going to have to play some of these young guys. Now, you just made a trade, so you don't have Wayne Selden and Marshawn Brooks anymore. But you just brought in the kid from Chicago, Justin, whatever his name is. So he should be able to help you. He can shoot from the outside, but they've got to get more athletic at the end of the day. That's really the bottom line, is you got to have athleticism. You're not going to beat teams you're running the Princeton offense, in the NBA. You got to have guys that can get by their man, break down the defense, and then get them to scramble such that you're getting open shots or you're getting baskets in the paint. So I advise the Memphis Grizzlies to begin looking at it. It may be painful because they just tanked last year, and I know they don't want to tank again. But you may have to look at that for the rest of the year if this continues the current track that they're on. So just be mindful of that, y'all, over at the Memphis Grizzlies organization. But we'll see if they can rebound and what they can do as it comes to that. So Scott Kenny here on Facebook Live says, talking about budgeting, I specialize in helping families and businesses cut expenses and increase income. I will give free information to anyone from the MYB podcast and how to make 2019 a game-changing year. The invitation is open. So you heard that from the man, my guy Scott Kenny. He's definitely a guy that you need to get with, that I support here on the Minding Your Business podcast. So if you happen to go to Facebook, look up Scott Kenny. And Scott, if you want to post your links or any ways that people can reach you, brother, let me know and I'll share those in the show notes. All right, cool. So listen, I appreciate everybody here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Go to www.themybpodcast.com. That's where you can see more content. You can see all the past episodes. Of course, go and rate us. Give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. That helps enhance our audience and increase our audience. You can find us on Spotify, where you can actually look us up on Amazon Alexa. We're on SoundCloud, YouTube, iHeartRadio, any of the places where you find great podcast content. Thank you so much to everybody on Facebook Live. Thank you to everybody that's on Spreaker. Scott Kenny's number, real quick, his cell 601-946-9175, or you can email him skenny, SKINNEY 67 @gmail.com. So thank you, Scott, for that. Listen, y'all have a great weekend. Happy New Year to everybody. We can still say that since it's on the 4th day of January. So Happy New Year. Wishing everybody a phenomenal, joyful, a peaceful, a respectful, and insightful 2019. This is the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Champ Ron. Entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. See y'all next week.
What we do here is go back.